I might as well make my own code here all the way, which will make the project 50% more expensive, but then at least I don't risk that in 10 years' time it won't work anymore.
Hi, and welcome to another casual conversation. Today, we want to talk about plugins, barcodes, what to use and what not to use.
Well, barcodes is one kind of plugins. There's a lot of different needs or possibilities for using plugins in your code, like sending and receiving emails, sending and receiving SMSs, integrating with Microsoft various programs and a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
First of all, you have the problem that you might not actually be able to do it with the tool that you're using. And secondly, even if you could do it with the tool, you might not want to do it because it's going to take a hell of a lot of time, and you're simply too lazy. But I can't help it because you were testing a barcode plugin, which is written in JavaScript.
Yeah.
So it makes it ideal for integrated into a web application.
Exactly.
But most of the plugins I've been using so far has been OCX components of various kinds. And that's altogether different thing. Although the principle is the same, that somebody has done something that you don't have to do then.
Yeah.
Or that you might not know how to do.
And I'm wondering if we are to implement this barcode scanner in Dataflex, do we actually want to use an OCX component since we have more experience? I think those kind of components have more stability and history than pure JavaScript ones. I have to look into it a bit more, but is it better to do it on the server side, or is it would it be nice to just do it in a JavaScript that can send the code into a form?
I think this is I'm not sure about this actually. For instance, if you want to send an SMS from your application, it's something. Well, you can choose either to send it from the device or from the server, but you could just altogether send it from the server. But when you're scanning a barcode, you are working on the device. You're out there, so to speak, and taking a photo is not some server-side thing. It is a client-side thing. So I'm not sure if you can get some practical solution to a barcode scanner OCX. I'm not sure, but at least we have to try to look into it.
If we were to have the code that reads the barcode on the server side, then we would have to send all the images back to the server all the time. But if it's done in the JavaScript directly, we could actually just read what's coming from the camera and do some calculations in JavaScript on it.
I think that would be altogether desirable, actually.
Yeah.
I would think so.
So now,
but then again, we'll have to see how it works.
Yeah. So now I'm in the situation where I have a scanner, and it have been proven to read barcodes. I had to update it a bit because it was using some old JavaScript technology that the browsers are not using anymore. But I got it running. But it seems like it's not scanning the codes correctly. I get some different numbers as a result, and I have to experiment a bit more to see if it's the quality or if it's the algorithm.
Yeah, well, but barcode is not just a barcode. Also, so it might be coded up for a different kind than you actually expect it to. But well, that's one thing. At least it generates a number.
Yeah.
That's very. Anyway, if you were to use an OCX component,
yeah,
then you would have to integrate it into the class library. And so far, what I have seen, it's not very well documented. So you are sort of reading in the information about the OCX, and you generated a whole lot of classes and commands, and then you have to reverse engineer that to make it work.
Oh yeah.
And that's also, yeah, well, if you have to do it, you do it. But that's the downside of using the OCX component, is that there's still a fair bit of voodoo to make it work, even though you got the integration of the classes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's also the question, what does it actually do for you? On what level do you want to use to integrate or to use your plugin?
Yeah.
Because I've been working with various different kinds of plugins, for instance, for sending emails. That's one, I can't remember what the hell it was called, but it worked quite nicely. But of course, you have to write a bit of Dataflex code to make it happen.
Yeah.
But you make some calls into that class library you get from the OCX, and then by magic you get some emails. But also, that's quite a lot of years ago, but you didn't have services for that. I made a SMS service, but I had to use a GSM modem to send the SMSs.
Yeah.
So the OCX component was something that enabled me to use the serial port of the computer.
Yeah. Okay.
From within Dataflex. That's a sort of very low-level plugin. You have to do everything yourself.
Yeah, you had to write all the code for actually sending the SMS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some similar experience sending mails from PHP, because you can use send mail directly from PHP and send emails, but they are perhaps not perfectly formatted, and the header information is not always what you expect, and there's a lot of things that can easily render your mail in the spam folder. So then there is this plugin that you can use that's called PHP Mailer, and when you use that, it will actually give you a lot of options, sending through a proxy server, sending directly using SendMail, or some other options. And it will also make sure that the format of the email with all the base 64 codes and stuff like that are correctly encoded and put in the right place with the right headers and footers and whatnot. So that's really neat to use, and then you don't have to make sure you follow all the standards that go into emails. You just have to download the latest version of the PHP Mailer plugin.
You know what I think? During the years, it's also been a lot easier to use plugins, actually. In the old days, where you used DLLs,
yeah,
you had to make external calls from your program, and that was a bit black box thing, because you didn't really get any messages passing back and through. So if it didn't work, you had to guess sort of, why isn't my code working here?
yeah.
And I remember that it's about 15, 20 years ago, can't really remember, when there was a really big hype about open source. But when it comes to the point, I don't think that it was so common to use other people's code in your own project.
Okay.
But now with the object-oriented and everything, I think it's very easy and very common to grab and steal and borrow wherever you can.
Yeah. Reuse everything you can. Yeah.
And it makes perfectly sense now.
Yeah, just look at the npm library. You can get anything you want from that library. But sometimes I'm a little bit reluctant to use plugins as well. I'm thinking, don't you ever worry about some plugin into your code that will um, send data somewhere else, or log what you're doing in your system without you knowing it or something, or maybe open a port that makes your system vulnerable for hacking because you're using some external plugin?
I can tell you that much. Every time I download something that I worry about, I will do it on my Kali Linux distribution, not on my Windows or my Mac or anything like that.
Yeah, but you still have to go through the code and validate that it doesn't do anything that you don't want it to do.
True, true. Yes. I think, though, that the code that are prone to do things like that, well, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should check it a bit more thorough,
Yeah, at least evaluate the source of where you get your code.
Yes, but that's the point, is that if you buy a plugin from some company, and you can go back to your website subsequent, they're still there and they get the money and everything works and so on, then you can to some extent rely that it's a proper company. They probably wouldn't do that kind of stuff if they want to stay in business.
No.
But I sometimes download mischievous stuff, something that I don't rely on, and then my starting point is that this is probably malware of some kind, and I don't want to put it, I don't want to use it in anything serious.
No.
So yeah, well, you're right, of course.
But would you rather trust open source or some proprietary system that you pay for?
That depends. I mean, open source might also be something you pay for. I think that a trusted company somehow would be preferred to some obscure, unknown, whatever. For instance, if you download a driver, a Windows driver, okay, it's not a plugin, it's a driver. That's also a black box. They might do whatever, Usually it's Microsoft stuff. I don't like to download drivers from other sources than Microsoft. It might be the exact same thing, but I don't like to do it.
No.
So I get my stuff from trusted sites, connections, companies, whatever. And I mean, I'm not saying that I trust Microsoft. I only trust that when I download from their site, it's their stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they'll send back from my computer anyway. Probably a whole lot of shit.
Yeah. Then we have this other aspect that when you put a plugin in your code, and perhaps the code is updated, like now we have all of these issues with code moving from 32-bit to 64-bit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have issues with old plugins not supporting 64-bit because the providers might not be available anymore. They might have shut down the business, but the plugin is still available to download from somewhere. But they are not inclined to develop something in 64-bit because they have moved on from that project. That is also one risk you take by using plugins.
Yeah, but you know what? That's life. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you have this project, you've developed some stuff for someone,
Yeah.
and it's been 32-bit, and you use 32-bit DLLs or ODXs or whatever.
Yeah, but
Then 10 years later, Microsoft changed it to the 64-bit platform. So would you think, I might as well make my own code here all the way, which will make the project 50% more expensive, but then at least I don't risk that in 10 years' time it won't work anymore. And
no, but it could also be in version updates that some feature does not work anymore by the next version. I've seen that in PHP, for instance. There are libraries that doesn't work anymore because, or JavaScript as well, because the system or browsers does not support these features that have been used in the old system. So they can go out of fashion really quick in some cases.
yeah, but it all does.
Yeah,
The only thing that has been around for about more than 30 years is DataFix.
Yeah.
As far as everything else has been either discontinued or renewed or changed or whatever, deprecated or whatever bad use you could use about the software. And yeah. Yes. Yeah. But you don't know for what reason your software won't work in 10 years. It could be a whole lot of other reasons. So
yeah, it could be. So,
and can you imagine that you've gone to length to make your own code?
Yeah.
So not to get into that trap, and then 10 years later or 20, your software won't work anymore because of some obscure details that nobody's thought about,
Yeah, but that's even true. If I write some code, then I might be using something that gets obsolete in the next version of the core software that my application runs on. So then I have to update my own code anyway. But it's my sense is that it might be easier for me to go in and update a feature in my code than to expect that someone who is providing an open source framework, for instance, should go in and update theirs. But that again depends on who it is. If it's many people using the plugin, if they have kind of made a pledge to update the software and stuff like that. But I don't say that it's black and white. I say that these are things that you might want to consider when you are looking at plugins.
Yeah, well, I think that probably my focus on plugins is that when I got a thing that I really don't want to do myself, I get a plugin.
Yeah, it's to save a bunch of time for the client to use something that already works, exists, and is proven. Because
and goes back to this thing we started with, the barcode.
Yeah.
Now the customer needs to read barcode.
Yeah.
I don't think that the customer is particularly interested in how that is done, as long as it's done.
Exactly.
So all the mechanics on how to read a barcode is not interesting here to anyone.
No.
Just do it.
Yeah. Get it work. And try to figure out the best, leanest way to get to the solution and provide the value for the client.
Oh, well, that almost sounds like a conclusion.
Yeah, it does. So, should we end at that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, okay. See you next week then.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye bye.